So we're moving on to our final speaker of the day, and this is Lizzie Brough, and she's one of those innovators I told you about in that little graph at the beginning, if you remember. She's the one that's going to bring us a new and better alternative to Facebook. Yes, she's promised, and she's working hard on that with some techies in Edinburgh. And she knows everything there's to know about the behind the scenes of how social media works and how algorithms work and how we end up doing what we do that we talked about so far on social media. And so here it is. Thank you.
Thanks, Petra. So I want to just take a few minutes to walk you through the dark forest of technology. And the reason that I frame it like this is the stories that Kenny and Amy described. I want to try and help you guys understand that that's not necessarily within your control. Why are we feeling those emotions? Why do we have those challenges? And if we're able to understand those challenges, then maybe there's a really good starting point in this room today to think, what are the ways in which we can challenge them? So I am an absolute lover of micro-adventures. I'm that person who on a sunny day, a sunnier day than today, has my nose pressed up against the window, just waiting to get outside. I can't wait for the adventure. So just this last weekend, I was out and about in nature and I took this photo. It's not on Instagram, just to follow up on all those previous conversations. I took it just for me. Because even just now, in this moment when I'm stood in front of a room full of people, my breathing is a little bit shallower than it would be normally, my heart's pumping a little bit faster because I'm presenting. But I can turn and look at that photo and I can feel what I felt then. So I felt a sense of calm. I definitely felt connected to something, to the world, to nature. I was really aware of those feelings. And I was in awe of the beauty. It was a beautiful sunshiny day. Look at the colors, it was stunning. And I definitely felt present. I felt like I was just there, I was in the moment. I had a sense of peace. And I definitely felt grateful that I had been able to get outside that day. I didn't have to be stuck behind a window. Then yesterday, just following up on that, I had a chat with a group of friends and we were talking about, isn't it great when you're actually in that moment, when you feel mindful, when you feel present and when you feel aware. But in comparison, we also talked about those times that just really get us down, that we feel kind of rubbish, kind of depressed, kind of distracted. Those moments when we notice that maybe we have the TV on, and then we maybe have our laptop open just to check a quick work email. And then we maybe also find that somehow, I don't really know how, my phone is just in my hand and haven't noticed that I'm also scrolling. So I could be having a conversation with my sister about her new cat. I could be kind of watching out the corner of my eye, something on TV, and I could be checking an email. And it's not that in it and of itself, any of these things are negative and are bad. It's the reasons behind why we're doing these things. Are we making a mindful choice to be involved in that kind of activity? What I want to really work on with you today, just over the next few minutes, is to think about those moments when we actually notice those negative feelings, we notice the scrolling, and we start saying to ourselves, I just wish I could be more disciplined. Why am I more focused? And you start having that, frankly, quite negative self-talk, but it's just quite destructive, like Danny was talking about. And it really adds up. What we want to understand is actually what's the environment that leads us to those kind of habitual and addictive behaviors. And if we get a chance to understand that, we can then understand how to change it. So after the explosive events of 2018 and the fallout of the Cambridge Analytica scandal, big tech has been under a lot more scrutiny when it comes to everything from how it handles data and users' privacy, and also how it designs and deploys algorithms. And so we should look at it. We should try and understand it. We should understand what's going on. You might be hearing much more of these kind of conversations. Aren't you totally freaked out how you're having a conversation about something and you're pretty sure you've never written it down and you've never texted about it, but then suddenly you've got an advert about it? It's kind of freaky, right? Aren't you freaked out that something that you're pretty sure you maybe like text once in WhatsApp, you then see an advert for on Facebook? Are your friends saying, I kind of feel like I'm just being followed around the internet? It's a bit weird. Or do you have people talking about smart speakers are the best thing since sliced bread, they're going to change our lives? Or actually they're the devil in disguise and they're sat there in full view on your kitchen counter? Now these conversations are happening way more than they did even just 2 years ago. And it's making people feel uncomfortable. So we're going to have a look at the ways that technology is deliberately designed to take advantage of us, of people. It takes advantage of our blind spots, of our edges, and of our vulnerability. It really can influence us and our behavior and our emotions without us even realizing it, and that's where the damage happens. So the things I'm going to share with you today, they're actually key outtakes from an influential tech insider. So his name is Tristan Harris. He was a design ethicist at Google. Those roles do exist. That's really important that they exist. And his blog post was all about how technology is hijacking our mind. And it went viral in 2016, and it is just as relevant today. So the first way in which technology is designed to hijack our mind is the idea of controlling the menu. We have a lot of chat, and if anybody lives with or knows teenagers, you'll hear this on an almost daily basis, about our freedom to make our own choices, and rightly so. But we ignore how these choices that are presented to us were actually decided in the first place. Who made the menu? Who gave us the options? And why? Lots of choices, like having so many television channels to choose from, or Netflix films or shows to watch, doesn't actually equal an empowered choice. Maybe that's something to think about when you're brainstorming in a little bit. What tech does is it manages to give us the illusion that we are making a free choice, that we're selecting something of our own free will. But as they've designed the menu, whatever we choose, they win. So whenever we blindly surrender, whenever we don't think, it's really easy to lose track of that difference. Was it actually my choice? So think of examples like, who's free tonight to go out, then becomes, who did I text most recently, who's at the top of my list? And other people don't even spring to mind. Or what's happening in the world becomes scrolling through a newsfeed for curated news. What are we not seeing? Or who's single and who's ready to date becomes a swiping contest. What about the people who maybe aren't on there and maybe we could have met in person? So we really have to be mindful of how deliberate technology is in the way it's designed, and have a little think about what are the questions we can start asking ourselves about who made the menu, what's not on the menu, and why did they decide to put what they put on the menu. So the second way that tech is designed to hijack our minds is by becoming a slot machine. So if you have an app, how do you keep people hooked on your app? Well, you turn it into a slot machine. On average, we all check our phones 150 times a day. That's the average. 150 times. Is that a mindful, conscious decision? Or is that an addiction? Why do we do this? How many of you, like me, have taken your phone out to check the time, seen you have no notifications, put it back, and realized you have no idea what time is? You didn't check the time. Then you have to do it again, and it's probably 10 of the 150 times right there. So when we do that, we're falling into the trap that technology users have deliberately designed. They've used the same behavioral methodologies as Pavel did with his dogs. And when we take our phone out, we know that we're entering that world where technology actually controls both the carrot and the stick. What that means is every time we open up our phone and we refresh to see if we've got a new email, we are playing that slot machine. Do I have a new email or do I not? Every time we swipe on Tinder, we're playing that slot machine. Do I have a match or do I not? Think of the emotions every single time. When you hit your red notification button and you see, has somebody, you're playing the slot machine of what is the message? Is it going to be a positive message, a negative message? Do you not feel anything about it? Every single time, they're really cleverly balancing that dopamine hit that's linked to reward and to pleasure with that really negative mini electric shock feeling when you don't get a reward. And if you have ever played the dating game and you know the danger of read receipts on WhatsApp, so you've sent a message, you can see the message has been delivered, you can see the message has been read, but then you can see that you've not got a notification saying that you've got a message back. How does that feel? We might feel like we are silly, that we're stupid for actually thinking those things, going on the emotional roller coaster, that we should just do better. We shouldn't be so involved, we shouldn't be so invested. We have to recognize that we are having a biological impact on our brain because of the technology that we are engaging with. It's designed to walk that really fine line between pain and pleasure. But if we know that that's what it's designed to do, then we can choose to make decisions that are going to limit those negative effects. So when you're brainstorming in a bit, think about that. How can you soften the blow? Can you start with turning off notifications? Where does it go from there? So another way that tech is designed to hijack our minds is to keep us consuming things, even when we're not hungry. Now, this came off the back of a Cornell professor who did an experiment literally with a bottomless bowl. So he filled it with soup, and he continually filled it with soup. And people ate 73% more calories, even though they weren't hungry, with a bottomless bowl. Now, tech deploys exactly the same methodology with the endless scrolling. Think of your news feed. Your endless scrolling means you're far less likely to be distracted, to reconsider, to think, to actually engage the part of your brain where you start to reflect and you start to challenge and you start to question. They're trying to keep you all eyes focused on the news feed. They're exploiting that also when we think about this. Who has been sat on the couch? Just one more episode. Because it plays, it automatically plays. It shows you what's happening next. Now again, in and of itself, there's nothing wrong with watching 3 episodes of your favorite thing on Netflix. But are you mindfully, deliberately, consciously choosing to do that? And in what ways can you actually challenge yourself? In what ways can you put constraints on yourself to make sure that you're in control and you're not being caught up in that cyclone? And the final way that I want to talk through today about how apps hijack our mind is this really clever balance that design technologists use to think about the reason that you are visiting an app and the reason that the business wants you to spend on that app. So I have an example. If you are going to a Facebook event and you want to check on Facebook, where is the event? What time do I have to leave? What's the deal? You can't do that without going through your newsfeed, getting distracted by your newsfeed, finding the event. So Facebook are merging the fact that you need to use them because you need to find the details of the event but we also need you to spend more time on the newsfeed, more time seeing adverts, more time making them money. On average, Facebook make $22.22 per user, and that's not per active user. It's phenomenal. So it really makes sense to them to make sure that we're caught up in that world, and that's why the technology is built to make it so addictive. Tristan Harris actually brings up the point, what if tech took on the responsibility of allowing us to do things that we wanted to do rather than merging it with our own business reasons? So an example would be, what if you could create a tweet without actually having to do that from your newsfeed, being able to see all of the incoming tweets? What if you could make a Facebook event and see the Facebook event details without going through your newsfeed? Or what if you could sign up and use Facebook Connect, so the ability to sign up to your third-party device? So if you're using Spotify and you sign in with your Facebook account, or you're using Eventbrite and you sign in with your Facebook account, what if you could do that without having to download and create a Facebook account and have that on your device and have the notifications and have the distractions that come in with that and all the data that they're gathering? So have a think about, how can we shape our environment? Now that you know that this is what they're channeling you into, is blending your wish and your desire for what you want to get out of it and their business desire, what can you do to actually challenge that and think a little bit differently now you know that that exists? So sometimes it's true, I've heard it around all the tables today, sometimes we just feel pretty crappy when it comes to social media. Sometimes we feel pretty negative, we feel addicted, we feel silly, we feel put down. I guess importantly, the first thing is, it's not just you, and it's also not a surprise. It's literally what it's designed to do. Really importantly though, 50% of teenagers say that they feel addicted to their phones. What does that really practically mean for the rest of social interaction and engagement? I mean, the man who created the internet says he has doubts and regrets over how it's used. Or Sean Parker, who was one of the initial investors in Facebook, says, God only knows what it's doing to the minds of our children. These are people who are involved. A group of US psychologists wrote to the governing body and said they're really worried about the ethicality of using science in consumerism. It's no surprise that you might sometimes feel rubbish when dealing with social media. Research shows that people's moods can be negative after 20 minutes of Facebook scrolling. It's also shown that even just having your phone on the table today or at a meeting can actually reduce your brain power when you try to complete a task. So today we've spoken about how design is deliberately done in tech to make it addictive, to hook you in, to get you caught in that cyclone, to give you the perfect amount of just enough pleasure and just enough pain to keep that addiction. We've talked about, well, there's definitely a jumping off point for how can you subvert that? How can you challenge it? How can you have awareness of it? So we thought about choosing the menu, who made it, playing the slot machine, do you actually want to be part of that? The infinite feeds and the scrolling, is it always going to feel that way? Or the moment you put it down, do you stop thinking about it and you stop being bothered about it? And then what can you do when you know there's reason bundling, when they mix your reason and their reason for you being on the app? Ultimately, I think it's really important events like today, but you can continue this in your workplaces, in your friendship group, with your families. You can actually recognize the negative impacts of technology and of social media. And I think first and foremost, you can just understand. You can empathize. And you can say, yeah, it's real. That sucks. That feels like that's tough. It's difficult. It is a real effect. And then we can start the conversation and talk about ways to really reclaim the balance. And that's me.